Hey, John Ty here, and welcome to the Self-Publishing Summit. Got a great guest for you today. He's a very talented marketer, and he's somebody who's helped a lot of authors, so he's perfect for the summit. He's passionate about helping thought leaders and self-help authors grow their revenues and expand their audience. And he's the #1 best-selling co-author of 2 books, Enlightened Bestseller, 7 Keys to Creating a Successful Self-Help Book, and Breakthrough, Inspirational Strategies for an Audaciously Authentic Life. He's a founding facilitator of the Enlightened Bestseller Mastermind experience for aspiring self-help authors, and has collaborated and consulted with #1 best-selling authors, including Marci Shimoff, who was a guest earlier in the week, Bray Attwood, and Chris Attwood. Our guest today, Geoff Affleck. Geoff, welcome to the show.
Hey, hi, John. Thank you for having me. It's great to be here.
Great to have you on the summit. So, given a little bit of an intro there, why don't you kick things off by, just telling us a little bit. I'd like to learn a little bit about the Enlightened Bestseller Mastermind group and the sort of work that you do with authors, and maybe how you ended up becoming an author yourself. And then obviously, I know we're going to cover the 7 keys to writing a successful how-to book. But if we start off with, what it is what kind of work you do and how you became an author yourself.
Sure, yeah, I'd be happy to. So the first part of that question about the Enlightened Bestseller Mastermind experience is, it's a program that we founded about 3 years ago with my colleagues Bray Attwood and Chris Attwood, who you may know are the New York Times bestselling authors of The Passion Test, and also just recently of another book called Your Hidden Riches. And also with Marci Shimoff, who you interviewed the other day, who's had, I think, 7 New York Times best-selling books and sold 15 million books, as you love to say over and over again. It's a great bragging right. So together with Janet and Chris and Marci, I facilitate this program for self-help authors, and it's kind of like small group consulting, where we bring in 12 people at a time for a 3-day workshop or boot camp, and really just pull back the curtain on everything we know about how to create a best-selling self-help book. Everything from planning the book and writing it and coming up with great titles, discussing the different publishing options. We go through things like, what does it really take to create a New York Times bestseller, which is a completely different animal, as you know, to creating, say, an Amazon bestseller or an Amazon Kindle bestseller. And then also a lot of work on how to build the platform, how to promote the book, and create not just a best-selling book, but a business around the book that's sustainable, where the book is just, I think it's like a book is like one leg on a table, and one leg isn't enough. So we, our clients that we work with, we like to help them create a book for one leg, perhaps a speaking platform as a second leg, online products and programs could be a third, and perhaps it's like Marci was talking about, an army of facilitators could be a fourth leg, or workshops or whatever it might be. So the book is really an important credibility piece that allows you to then create a business around the skills and passions and knowledge that you have as an author.
Yeah, I think I'm sorry, but in there, Geoff, I was just going to say, I think that there's having a book creates a real synergy with all of those other things. I mean, you could do all those things, those other legs, if you like, and I guess you have as many legs as you want, a multi-leg table, but all of those legs are going to be that much stronger if you've got a book, to back them up, just because, as you say, the credibility and the ease with which you get media compared to if you don't have a book, and all those things.
Yeah, it's totally a business card, really, that positions you as an expert. And, a great example, and we love to talk about this client. Her name's Ellen Rogin, and the viewers can look Ellen up at just thinking, pictureyourprosperity.com. Picture Your Prosperity is the name of her book. 2 months ago, Ellen launched that book, and it became a New York Times bestseller. Reached number 8 on the in the category of what do they call it? How-to and miscellaneous.
How-to,
right. So
like that,
so she's someone that attended our program, and we worked with Ellen and put together a strategy to help her create a really strong book proposal, get an agent, several New York publishers were bidding on the contract. It was a very exciting time, you know, a very healthy six-figure book deal, and then was able to pre-sell somewhere around 10,000 books before the book launched and create the New York Times bestseller, which has then spun off into a tremendous amount of interviews that she's and her partner or her co-author have been doing on TV, on you know, she's a financial planner by trade, but has a different spin on the book where it's not about, you know, what stocks to buy or how to allocate your portfolio. It's about the inner game of abundance and mindset, and using right brain and spiritual tools in conjunction with those traditional left brain tools that a financial planner would have. So it's a little bit of a twist on money management. And Ellen has been able to get some fabulous media. She has, you know, many speaking engagements now and is running workshops. And so she's got that, you know, those four legs really strong now, and using the book as a cornerstone for that. So yeah, it's exciting for her and for us to see, you know, to see someone that, you know, came to us a few years ago and then has now reached that level of success.
And I was going to say, when she came to you, did you have any experience?
She had a self-published book that was, you know, it was out there. It wasn't doing particularly big numbers, and was doing some you know, some speaking, but now it's certainly taken it to a whole new level. Yeah.
And there's something, I mean, that's a great story, and I love the fact that you've had somebody who's been so successful. And I was, you know, mentioned this before we came on air, and I remember sort of seeing the post going up on Facebook about it and stuff, which was fantastic.
Yeah.
And I think it's, you know, it's great that you've got people going through the group and having that kind of success. And one of the things that we mentioned as well was, and again before we came on air, was the importance of platform building as well. And that was something that made the difference with this book, didn't it?
Absolutely. Yeah, sorry, it just cut out a little bit there, so I may have missed a word or two on your.
Sorry, I was just saying that we platform building. You know, some people take it serious. So no, you get a group of people who get the same information, and some people take it and run with it and do it. Doesn't matter if it's perfect. You know, doesn't matter if you make mistakes. You know, we all do that, but. And other people don't they know it, but they don't do anything with it. Whereas in the case of this book, you know, the platform building was a key part of its success, wasn't it?
It was, and you know, so it's often a matter of how creative you can get with your strategies. In Ellen's case, she was able to do some bulk sales of her book to, you know, as a financial planner, she was able to sell thousands of copies to. One particular, I think they're a mutual fund company, and so they bought the books for their representatives to give to their clients. So it was a win-win. So, you know, very creative in that way. She also had a strategy for every book that was purchased, she would donate one to a woman in need, and so she partnered up with some charities that particularly were supporting women, so that she could, you know, donate those books to those women in need to help those women create more abundance in their lives. And so it was a strategy of, you know, based on giving, yet everybody that was involved benefited from that strategy, and it's helped Ellen and her co-author Lisa immensely.
Yeah. And I like that, you know, getting a lot of copies out, because you need probably about 10,000 plus copies in a week is the usual number you hear to hit the New York Times bestsellers for that kind of book, the how-to category. And if you can get hundreds or thousands of copies out to, you know, whether it's a mutual fund or whatever else, that, you know, that takes you a big step of the way there. And so, you know, if you listen to this, be thinking about, you know, what's the angle of the book, what makes it interesting, and what groups or what organizations would this appeal to? Because you've got somebody like a mutual fund where they've got lots of customers and all sorts of people that they're connected to who, you know, they could give the book out to as a gift, makes them look good, and so it aligns. And so that, you know, think about, you know, who, you know, which organizations have got the money to buy a lot of books in bulk and give it away to people who they've got an audience already who are their existing customers.
Exactly. We have another person that we've been working with. Her name is Laura Lane, and hi Laura, if you're watching today. Laura had quite a tragedy in her life where her daughter died of cancer recently, and she wrote a book about that story and how her daughter had made friends with another girl in the United States who had the same kind of cancer and was the same age, and they became friends and so on. But as Laura's just launching her book now, she's working on the same bulk sales model, but this time it's going to be through, she's hoping it would be through a large, I don't know if you'd really call them a drug company, but certainly someone who has the ability to reach people who through the hospitals and get the book into the hands of parents in the hospitals with children who are, in a serious condition, but have, rather than the hospital buy the book or the parent buy the book, the drug company would buy the books and distribute them accordingly. And so Laura could potentially have a bestseller on her hands. If that strategy pans out. So this is only one strategy. It's not something that that I'm recommending for everyone, but it can certainly give authors hope if you can think about who really needs your book. And we'll get into the 7 keys in a moment. That's really one of the key ones, is really understanding who is your audience. But John, you'd asked me, I don't know if this would be the right time, but you'd asked me about how I got into this. That was the second part of your question. Do you want to go there before we go into the 7 keys?
If that would work, because I don't want to jump too far ahead, because I guess we're probably kind of getting into the territory of some of the 7 steps. But if it makes sense now to talk about the work that you've done. Yeah,
a little bit. So I actually came into this world not as an author or someone with a self-help message to share. So it's kind of a crazy path. I actually began my career as a ski instructor, of all things. I'm Australian. You may hear a little bit of my accent still. I live in Canada now the last 25 years. So I was a ski instructor, and I actually owned my own ski school in Ontario for some time, for about 10 years or so. And through that, I really got to understand the power of a mailing list and understanding how do you create offers and customize communication for specific audiences. And so that's what was really my first foray into the world of online marketing and targeted marketing. And after selling that business in 2007, I actually got, like many people, went through a transition of not knowing what to do with, when I grow up and for the rest of my life. And I happened to take a seminar with the Attwoods, with Janet Attwood and Chris Attwood, who are the authors of the Passion Test. And for those who don't know, the Passion Test is a process that helps you define your top 5 passions in life, and then gives you a series or a set of tools so that you can make decisions and choices and so on around those passions. And it was through that process that I really realized that online marketing was my passion, and another passion of mine was for personal growth for myself mainly. So that's how I really got into this business. I began working with Chris and Janet on a project basis, creating some online courses for them, doing a big online launch a few years ago where we added, I think it was 70,000 people we added to our email list in a 2-week period through a joint venture launch. It was a very exciting time. It was my first time involved in such a launch, and we created a product based on the Passion Test that enrolled thousands of people into an online course, and it was very successful. And so through that, I became their marketing director, or their online marketing director, and that's where about 3 years ago one of the products that we decided to create was this Enlightened Bestseller Mastermind experience that I talked about earlier. And so been very fortunate to have great mentors like Chris and Janet, and also Marci, to provide opportunities for me. And as I've grown into that role, I now have the opportunity to help other authors, many of our clients and others too, to who are wanting to get their self-help or how-to book out into the world in a big way, using the strategies that we teach at Enlightened Bestseller and putting them into action. It's really exciting to see the results that some of our clients are getting. So yeah, so that's in a nutshell.
Earlier,
yeah.
Very good. Yeah. Good. Okay. Well, should we dive into the 7 keys?
Yeah. And I know one of the bonuses that you have for those who've taken your self-publishing summit offer is our ebook, and I'd recommend for everyone to get that package. The ebook's also available on Amazon. It's called Enlightened Bestseller: 7 Keys to a Successful Self-Help Book. But the 7 keys I'm going to talk about today they're all actually included in the book, but I'm not going to give you the exact same keys that are in the book, because I think there are some of the sub keys within the keys could be a key on their own. So I want to focus on what I find to be some of the ones that are really really easy for people to get their head around and very practical. I'm all about making it as practical as I can. Yeah. And it's possible some of your other speakers may have touched on these, and that's great, because if people are hearing this again and for the second or third time, even better, because obviously it's important.
Yeah,
right?
Absolutely. It is. Yeah.
So the first one I want to touch on is really ask yourself the question, who is this book for? And it's kind of it may seem like an obvious question, but it's so important to have clarity. One of my mentors was T. Harv Eker, and he says clarity is power, and I completely agree with that. So really understanding who your audience is. I know Marci touched on this too. If your book is for everyone, then think a little bit deeper. Your book is probably not for everyone. Go a little bit deeper into who it's for. You can start with the demographics of, is it men, women, a certain age group, a certain profession, education, those sorts of things. And that's important, but it's not as important as the psychographics, which is really what's going on in the mind of your potential reader. So it's really important for you to have a clear definition of who your ideal reader is, and in particular, what problems they have in your life that your book is the answer to.
Yeah.
And so defining your audience is key number 1. And the second key really it's very much tied to this. And if you were to write a book proposal and submit it to a publisher or an agent, this is one of the questions they'd be asking you. Is they'd say, well, why in the world do people need your book? Why does the world need another book on passion, another book on happiness, another book on diet, for goodness sake? If you look on the New York Times list today, you'll probably see 8 out of the top 20 books are on diets or cookbooks. Why in the world do they need this book? What is unique about your book? And so that's an important question to ask. What's unique about your book? So come back to the reason that people would pick up the book. We call it the transformational promise of the book. Jack Canfield has referred to it. I believe he uses the term the compelling message in the book. And so we know that people have pain, emotional pain in their life, and that's usually a problem that hasn't been solved. Perhaps it's as simple as they want to learn how to do something. When I bought your amazing book, Crush It with Kindle, it opened up so much knowledge for me. My problem was I wanted to publish Enlightened Bestseller, the ebook, but I didn't know how. So I got your book, and so it was a solution, a very simple problem solution type of thing. Now you may be writing a book that's more of a transformational self-help or how-to book on how to overcome grief or deal with forgiveness, or it could be something very, very emotional. So in that case, you really need to get inside the mind of the reader and understand what's going on. And we know that people will take much greater action to move away from pain as they compared to moving toward pleasure. So you have these two sides of the coin. And so if you can really speak to the person's pain, then they're more likely to buy the book. So here's a great exercise, and I would like to credit Marci Shimoff for this one. If you take a piece of paper and and you just draw a line down the center of the page, just like I've drawn right there. Okay, this is really high-tech stuff here. All right.
Hey, if it works, it works.
Yeah, and then on one side, I'm just making a note here, and I don't know if you can even read my writing, but on one side of that, I've written the word pain. On the other side, I've written the word pleasure.
Yeah, we can see that.
Yeah. So make a list of what's going on the pain side. Make a list of what's going on in your reader's life right now. You know, they're unhappy. Their relationships are in turmoil. They're crying all the time. They can't get out of bed in the morning. They're depressed. You know, whatever it is, they're frustrated. So make a note of those emotions and what would be going in their life. And then on the other side, it's pretty much the opposite. What would their life look like if they took your advice and had their problem solved for you? And then what you have is from, I'm going to draw something else on my handy dandy flip chart here. You can see an arrow at the top.
Yeah.
That arrow is your transformational promise, and it may be your process, or for the Americans, their process for getting from point A to point B. It's your 7 steps. It's your 7 keys. It doesn't have to be 7. It's getting from one place to the other. But I would caution the authors watching this: don't focus too much on the process or your technique or your methods. People don't really care about the how. What they care about is that you understand their pain and that you have a solution. And so focus on those 2 things, rather than what you tend to do as knowledgeable authors is to focus all about how I'm going to get you there. But I don't really care. At this point, if I'm looking at a cover of a book, I'm not so much concerned about the how, I'm concerned about the what. Yeah. So I think that's a really important starting point. And this is what we, when we work with people, is we really help drill into that, because people come to us and they think they're fairly clear on who the book's for and what the problem is that they're solving, but they're usually all about their process. And so we want to help them get more focused on the reader's perspective. They're always asking in their mind, what's in it for me? Why would I buy this book? How is my life going to be different if I read this book? So shall I keep going?
Yeah, just before we go on to point 3, I think you mentioned basically showing that you understand their pain. I think that's really important. People really want to be listened to and understood, and if you can convey that within the material that people are going to look at, your book's title, subtitle, description, the introductory part, if they start looking inside the book, browsing the first few pages, that sort of thing. And you mentioned pain and pleasure, so I got a question for you, because you mentioned the studies, and the studies typically show that pain, getting away from pain, is twice as motivating as the pursuit of pleasure, as in an unrealized gain. And that's for sort of sound evolutionary reasons, which we don't need to get into here. But if it's twice as motivating for the pain, you definitely want to have that. But you've got your chart. I did a little sketch of it I'm looking at here, pain moving across to pleasure. When you're trying to bring somebody in, you mentioned the pain. Do you also give them the pleasure as well, the solution, what their life's going to be like afterwards? Do you mention both of those things to kind of get the benefit?
And typically what we see in the title of the book, and this is the first mention of the transformational promise, is in the title. In a self-help book, it's all, generally speaking, it's always a 2-part title. For example, happen to have a book, one of our books here. This is a book that I co-authored with several of our students. So the title is Breakthrough. So breakthrough on its own really doesn't say that much. But it's perhaps catchy, and it gets your attention, and it's obviously there's some sort of feeling of, oh, I'm gonna have a breakthrough in my life, or an improvement, or something. But then the subtitle, Inspirational Strategies for an Audaciously Authentic Life, we're really focused on the pleasure side in this particular book, right? It's all about an authentic life, so that would be on the B side. You could look at a book like I would think, say, Marci's Happy for No Reason book. The subtitle is 7 Steps to Happiness from the Inside Out. Forgive me, Marci, if I missed 1 or 2 words up on that title, but it's the idea. So we have a process, which is 7 steps, and then there's this little twist of it. It's happiness from the inside out. That's a little bit different. So we do see many of the books, the title tends to be on the pleasure side more, which is interesting. And I think it would be interesting to do some research to see how many books actually use the pain side as part of the title. It's interesting that I can't think offhand of that many that do.
Yeah, and I suspect, I mean, we've talked about, not on this particular broadcast, but in the past we've talked about titles and subtitles.
Yeah.
And one of the things you can't really do this. Usually, you can't do this with a title. They tend to be shorter. But with a subtitle, you've got a little bit more room to play with. And if you can find a way of incorporating the pain or the problem that's going to be overcome and the pleasure, the solution where they're going to get to, and actually have both of those. I mean, I think that's the sort of the perfect scenario, as long as it's not, as long as it's still catchy and readable and not too long and cumbersome.
Yes, exactly.
It doesn't mean you have to do that, but if that's a possibility, if you can do that, I think that would
absolutely. And as you say, and Crush It, the Kindle and others have too, is having those keywords in the title really work well with search engine, with Amazon, and with Google. So having those keywords that people would be searching on for a book in the title is another important thing. So
good. Okay.
So moving on to the third point, this would be another question if you were to submit a book proposal to a traditional publisher. They would be asking you, who is the book for? Why does the world need the book? And the third thing they'd ask you is, why you? Why on earth are you the person to write this book? What qualifies you to write this book? And probably if you're writing a how-to or self-help book, you've probably had some experience in your life that you've overcome. That's a very common and very valid reason to write a book, and it gives you great credibility as an expert who's lived it. Of course, if you have credentials that qualify you, then even better. If you've overcome some terrible trauma in your life and want to teach others, then that's great too. And what's really important, though, as you're putting your book together, for example, if you look up on Amazon under the 2 or 3 million books, I think last time I checked, there were something like 9,000 books under the search for happiness. So what's why on earth would one happiness book stand out over another? And I'll go back to Happy for No Reason. That's a great example. When Marci had the idea to write Happy for No Reason, she was not an expert on happiness. She was actually an expert on being unhappy. She was very successful. She'd had all these chicken soup bestsellers, and the world was at her feet, speaking a lot and so on. But inside, she wasn't happy. And this is something that she was, she'll tell you that she was born with existential angst. She's an anxious person growing up as a child. And so she wanted to learn what was the key for being happy from the inside out. And so she went on a mission to find experts and so she interviewed the positive psychologists and the experts on happiness, and she interviewed her happy 100 people that she knew or was introduced to that appeared to be very happy, to try to find out the secrets. And in the end, she determined that happiness was 50% genetic and 50% under your own control. And so she focused on what could you do in that 50% that you can control to be more happy. So she became the expert on happiness by having that problem in her own life first, and then went out and searched for the answers and found it through others. And now she's really recognized as an authority in happiness. So if you don't have the credentials, you're not a PhD in whatever, and or you haven't had the experience yet, but it's something that you're very passionate about, then you can go out and interview other people, and then that makes you the expert. Just I mean, John, you're obviously the expert in self-publishing because there's a big banner behind you and you're interviewing 24 people.
Yeah,
Of
well, that's it.
experts in the
And
field, right?
yeah, and let me just jump in there because I do know a lot about self-publishing, but I'll tell you, there's a lot of stuff I don't know. And every time I speak to somebody, every time I interview somebody, whether it's this or my podcast or whatever it is, I learn new stuff all the time. Amazon's changing things all the time. The whole world of self-publishing is a whole world outside of just Amazon. It's a constant learning process. And, I think if you ever stop and think that you're an expert and you know everything, that's when you start to get into trouble.
Totally.
And I just want to pick up a point, because you mentioned, these first three keys, these are questions which an agent would ask you or a publisher would ask.
Yes.
But I just want to make the point that even if you're not looking for an agent stroke traditional publisher, even if you plan to go fully self-published, these are still the great questions that you should be asking yourself, because the reason that the publishers and the agents ask these questions is because they're fundamental to the success of the book. So
Absolutely.
however you plan to publish, whether it's pure self-publishing, hybrid publishing, or you want to go down that traditional road, ask all these questions of yourself.
Exactly. This is true. I mean, even if you're, I'll get to this in one of the other keys, but even if you're not planning to go the traditional route, you do want to have a book plan, and this is part of that book plan, because ultimately the success of your book is going to be very dependent on your ability to communicate that transformational promise and the uniqueness of the book to an audience with a very short attention span.
Yeah.
Right.
Who's getting pitched a lot, and again, you're getting whether your audience is an agent, you kind of need an agent to get in front of a publisher typically. The publisher, if you get to that next stage, or going straight to the public, they're getting pitched hundreds thousands of books, whether it's to publish, to be the agent for, or to buy. Like you said, 9,000 books come up when you search for happiness. There are I think now certainly over 3 million books on Amazon, Kindle, and traditionally published books, all combined. So you've got to communicate quickly.
You do, and that's why that title is so key, and the cover is so important, that it pops, and that's when people are just looking at a thumbnail now, that that it's readable. Something like Breakthrough is it's in your face. Where I see others that are very nicely designed covers, but they don't pop on Amazon or online. So so for those sorts of that sort of advice, crush it with Kindle, because it covers all of that stuff. So the fourth point I wanted to make about, or the fourth key for a great self-help or how-to book, and this is going to sound really obvious, but it needs to be a great book. You need to write a good book, because you can write some sort of, for the want of a better word, a crappy book, and you may even be able to get to be a bestseller, but it'll be a flash in the pan. You'll get negative reviews. You'll get initial spike, but you won't get the referral sales, and so it'll die. So you want to have a book that's going to have some legs. And here are some practical ways that I think you can do that. And I've learned a lot of this from my colleagues, Chris and Janet. So 5 elements that make a great book in the how-to and self-help space. The first one is stories, and particularly your own story, if it's relevant to the topic. It's people love people's stories. They're interested in people. So if you pick up a copy of, say, the Passion Test, and I don't have one with me, or else I'd read it to you, but the opening page is a conversation where Janet just gets back from India, and she's saying, "Oh my God, Chris, I got to tell you about my trip," and instantly you're hooked, because there's this story coming. And she tells a little bit, and then they go on and say, "But before we do that, we're going to go over here." So you get left hanging, wondering what on earth happened in India, right? So we call that an open loop. You're left hanging, and then from that they may go on to perhaps it's a principle or some knowledge, which is the second element of a great book. And then you might come back to a piece of the story again. So we close that loop, and then we open up a new loop, and then we go to a new principle, and so on. So the 5 elements would be your story, other people's stories, which is what Marci's used a lot in her books. 3 is information and principles. So these are the key teachings, that knowledge that people would need to learn or would want to learn. A 4th element would be statistics and research. So particularly if you're not the expert, then you want to quote other experts, because it just makes things makes things more credible. And then the 5th part that makes a great self-help book, and this is really the key piece, is are the practical tools. What are the exercises and things that you could be doing. So each chapter might have a particular exercise. So now take out a piece of paper and write pain down one side and pleasure down the other, and there's an exercise. So those, if you can have at least 4 of those 5 elements in the book and spread them throughout the book, it's going to make for a compelling read. And so we have a wonderful title that gets people to open the book. We have something very engaging at the beginning of each chapter that gets people to want to read into the rest of that chapter, and then the next chapter. And so you're constantly drawing people through the book with these elements. And there's a wonderful...
And that's really, just to pick up on the point you were saying about the open loops and the stories. And that's very much what fiction authors do, isn't it? So it's the same principle. I was so smiling as you were describing that, because I just started reading Game of Thrones. I haven't seen the series. I thought I'd start reading the book before I did. And of course, every chapter is, you've got basically an open loop at the end of every chapter to keep you reading.
Because if you've ever tried to read if you've ever tried to read a self-help book that's just knowledge and tools, it gets really boring after a while. It almost becomes a bit preachy. It's like, here's the knowledge, now do this, do that. But there's no personality to it. So it's so important to have those stories. The book I referred to at the beginning, Ellen Rogan's book, Your Picture Your Prosperity, same principle, stories all the way through it. I mean, even a book like, recently I've been studying with financial coach Phil Town, and Phil's books, #1 New York Times bestseller, Rule 1 is the title of the book. But stories throughout, stories of people who rags to riches stories and how they did it, and it's much more interesting to read that using them as a case study than just reading about how to do options trading.
And more motivational as well, so you're getting both benefits. And
then you can say, well, if they can do it, then I can do it. So those are the elements of a great book. And I'll move into the 5th key, and this will tie back to the 4th one as well. It's about planning your book and planning your marketing campaign. So really 2 parts. So Marci gives a great strategy for planning your book, and she calls it the Post-it note technique. And so what the idea is that you will get a blank wall or a big board, a whole lot of different colored Post-it notes, and you'll have, let's say, the blue one is for your personal story, the pink one is knowledge, the yellow one is practical tools and tips, and the red, whatever other color I have, is for research and statistics. And then what she does is that every thought or idea is written on a Post-it note, and they're color-coded depending on whether they're a story, knowledge, tools, or research. And then those Post-its are stuck on the wall under the chapter headings. And then that way you can organize the content so that within each chapter you've got all 4 colors, and then you move them around, and then that one doesn't belong in there, it goes over there, and so on. And so she and her co-author Carol Klein would map out the book using these Post-it notes, and that way they ensured that all the elements were there and that each chapter was balanced. And whenever a new idea came up, Post-it note, and then where does it go on the wall? So it's a wonderful technique. Also, if you do have a title that includes 7 keys or 5 steps or whatever it is, that can be a great way to plan your book out, because then you're going to have your introduction, your step 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, and then your conclusion. So it's a very simple way to plan out the content of your book.
Yeah. And maybe to add to that, if you have that 5-7 step process, whatever it may be, but you still want to be applying these 5 steps that you've got to writing a great book, and having the story, the knowledge, the tools, research things. And I just realized as you were saying that, I've got my multicolored poster. So I'm all good to go.
Same colors, yeah.
Yeah, good. Yeah, no, I like that.
Yeah, and the other part of planning, so planning is important if you're going to be, particularly important if you're going to be submitting a book proposal to an agent. And I know that most people listening are probably going to go the self-publishing route, but also just know that if you are thinking that you would like to get your book published by an agent, it's traditional that you don't actually write the book first. You actually write the book proposal first, which is an overview of the book and an overview of your marketing plan. You sell the concept, you submit a table of contents and perhaps one sample chapter, an introduction and a sample chapter. And then once the proposal is accepted, then you go write the book. It's not, many people think they should write the book, have this massive manuscript, and then, PDF file or mail it over to an agent or a publisher. It doesn't work that way anymore. You're pitching the book, you're selling the book, and that's where the marketing plan is so important. You've got to have that 15 or 22 point marketing plan with all the tactics laid out to show that, because the publishers ultimately mostly care about one thing, other than those 3 questions, is can you sell books, and how many can you sell? And so that's why having your marketing plan in advance is so important. I really can't stress enough. It's to sit down and just write your book, and then sort of say, oh, now what am I going to do? I guess I got to find a publisher, and oh gosh, I wonder how you actually, I can move these books and not have a box of them in my garage. It needs to be a parallel process. So as you're writing, you need to be working on marketing, probably as much time on marketing and promotion as you're spending on writing itself.
Yeah. And that's really important, isn't it? Just because a lot of authors, a lot of writers, understandably think that's how people identify themselves. And so the marketing is very much a secondary thing for a lot of people in this space, whether it's fiction or how-to type stuff. And that can be a big adjustment for people to understand that actually the publisher that is not going to do a lot of marketing for you. And obviously if you're self-published, you have no publisher anyway. So it's got to come down to you. And when they are filtering, that's one of the biggest things is, yes, it's got to be a good book, but can you sell books? And you've obviously stressed that. I can't stress that enough is, if you have an issue, if you're listening to this and you have an issue with marketing, with selling your book, you need to get over that, because it's so crucial to your success. And if you write a good book and it's valuable to people, then certainly you shouldn't have any issues with selling it, because it's going to be good material. It's going to help people. But you do need to at least get to grips with some of the keys to marketing and be able to demonstrate that you can shift books, basically sell books. Yeah,
exactly. And it's understandable if you're an author that, and I see this over and over again with the people that we work with, it's not their forte. It's not their passion. It's not their talent. It's a skill that can be learned, but if it's not your passion, then it can be tough. And that's where you need to look at outsourcing that function. And if you are going to outsource your marketing, then you need to have at least a high level understanding of what's involved, because you don't want to be hands off. You need to be able to understand the strategies and be able to make intelligent decisions, so that you're not wasting your money on things that may not pan out at all. And so really that comes down to the next key, number 6, is building your platform. And we use this word a lot, and building your platform as you're writing the book. not waiting until you've written the book before you build your platform. So what is a platform? Guy Kawasaki has a great book out. I'm sure you've seen it, John, called Ape, Author, Publisher, Entrepreneur.
I have.
How to publish.
I'm just before you go into that, I'm just going to tell you a very quick story. I'm laughing when you mention that. So Ape came out just a little bit before Crush It with Kindle.
Yeah.
And Crush It with Kindle, the two sort of top level the two like subcategories on Amazon that I picked for it were direct marketing. It was the #1 in direct marketing, and authorship, and it has been since #1 in authorship. But at the time, Ape had just come out, and for the whole of the month of January 2013, just after the book was launched, I was battling Guy Kawasaki for that #1 spot, and I just couldn't. It was my first book, and I think I just couldn't shift him from that #1 spot. So for most, he was at #1 for the whole month, and I was basically #2 for the whole month. Right. And every day I would go in and check, and I'd still be, oh damn, still #2. So I'm a big fan of Guy.
That's great. Well, now considering that Guy has a social media following of I don't know, 5 or 6 million people.
Yeah.
And
I don't feel so bad.
Yeah, and has written. I think this was his 15th book or something like that.
Yeah,
so he's a guy who went from being published by big New York publishers to realizing that actually for him where the money was and where the control was in self-publishing, and so he's gone the other way. He's no longer seeking the big publishing deal. He wanted to have control over the full process, and so he's written a wonderful book on everything from the topics that I've been covering of the concept of the book right through to writing it, to editing, to the mechanics of self-publishing and creating ebooks and through to marketing. So and this is one of his key points is build your platform while you're writing the book. It's a parallel process, not a sequential process. So Guy defines a platform, and I would agree it's really the sum of all the people that you know and can reach, and also all of the people who know you. So that would mean obviously your email list, your social media following, the ability to reach people through other people's email lists and social media following. So those are your joint venture partners, and also people who know you through mass media. You may not know them, but they know you. So that's your platform. It's your reach. It's your ability to reach people's inboxes. Excuse me 1 second. I gotta drink from my enormous mason jar of water that I keep beside me.
Gotta keep hydrated.
Yeah. So how do you, if you're just starting out and you have a small platform, how do you start to build your platform? We know that it is much more preferable to have an email list to a social media following. They're both important, but we know in terms of converting subscribers to buyers, email list is still where it's at. Marci mentioned in her interview that Guy had said that, we'd asked him, would you rather have 5 million, a 5 million social media following, or a few 100,000 on email? And he definitely would prefer that the email subscribers, even though the magnitude is much lower, because as you mentioned in that same interview, Facebook and so on just aren't showing that many posts anymore. So unless you're sponsoring your posts, you may have 100,000 followers on Facebook or fans on Facebook, but how many of them are actually seeing your posts? If you don't boost them, maybe a few thousand at most. So and converting those people into buyers is key. So if you're going to build your social media following, absolutely, but you want to be sure that you're converting those followers to email subscribers, and then it's the email subscribers that are generally going to buy your book. Even then, it's only a small percentage of them. So obviously, the more people you can reach, the more that the more sales of your book. And just as an example, Chris and Janet's last book, Chris and Janet Attwood, was Your Hidden Riches, which was a book about the power of ritual in your life. I believe through that campaign, we reached somewhere in the magnitude of 3 million inboxes, so 3 million email subscribers. Now, we don't have a list of 3 million, but we have relationships with people who have large lists, and we have a significant six-figure list ourselves. So we were able to get into 3 million email boxes. Now, that translated into, as you said, somewhere around the magnitude of 10,000 book sales. So, when you understand a little bit about conversions, you need to reach a very big number to get a sizable number of actual paid book sales. And so that's why it's so important to build your own platform and to build relationships with people who have lists that you can leverage. And here's the tricky part. It's sort of horse and cart, chicken and egg, is other partners are going to be more interested in promoting your book if you've got an email list where you could reciprocate.
Yeah.
Right. And so this is the challenge. If you have an email list of 500 and you're approaching someone who's got an email list of 50,000, they're going to be asking the question, well, what's in it for me? You'll say, well, I'd be happy to promote you to my 500 people, but that may not get them that excited. So it's really in your interest. And Guy talks about the number of 5,000 is to build your platform to at least 5,000 by the time your book comes out. If you can, and that could be the sum of your email and social media and so on. And that'll give you a little bit of leverage. And that way, if perhaps you're going to start doing interviews like I'm doing right now, then you could promote those interviews to your people, and therefore someone like John would be interested in interviewing you because you have the ability to spread the word about the Self-Publishing Summit to your list, and so on. So the best way to start building your email list is with an opt-in page, and create a free gift of some kind, some sort of valuable content that addresses the transformational promise that your book makes, and set it up. It's very affordable to do something like that. Create an opt-in page. We love lead pages. I think you're using lead pages, John.
That's right.
Right. So leadpages.net is a wonderful template system for creating opt-in pages. Get yourself an email marketing software system like iContact or MailChimp or Constant Contact or Aweber, something like that, that'll cost you $10 or $20 a month to start with, and get those two connected and come up with some sort of a free gift. It could be a quiz, it could be even a report or a short ebook or something like that. We've had people do guided meditations on MP3. Anything that speaks to the pain of your audience, and then create a set of content that would be dripped out over, say, the next 30 days, perhaps 5 or 6 emails with additional free content. And so the idea is just to build that rapport, create a relationship. It's like you're dating, and you don't want to be trying to sell anything at that point, but just building your list so that when your book comes out, you've got some people that would be interested in your content. Blogging is another great way to do that. Perhaps have a weekly or bi-weekly blog that you can then email out to your list and say, hey, new blog post up, and this is the topic, again, related back to the problem. So that would be the number one thing for creating your platform or building a platform is the opt-in page and building your email list. Another would be, if you're planning to create a physical book, then get an ebook out really quickly. There are many people you can go to for help on that, including Crush It with Kindle. There's some great ideas for content, and just to get something out there, give it away for free, get it into the bestseller list in a category on Kindle, and now you can say you're a best-selling author of this particular ebook, and it can be as quick as a couple of months from start to go to get an ebook out on Amazon. Another way to build your platform would be participate in something like this. I'll hold this up again. This is a compilation book, a multi-author book. We had 23 authors in this book. We have another one coming out in a couple of months that has a similar number. And so this is a great way for you to build your platform by association with best-selling authors. Chris, Janet, and Marci are the lead authors on that book. And, when we do our marketing campaign for that book, each of the authors will have the opportunity to have a link on our launch page, and also within the book, where people can go to their opt-in page to claim a free gift and then join their list. So this is a list building tool, not just a book.
Yeah.
Yeah. So those would be just, some of the key things to do. And again, if you don't know how to do all this and it's not your forte, then find someone who understands it. But it's important that you understand the high level so that you can guide them as to what you want. And I'll just quickly touch on the last point. And you've seen this thread throughout. For me, the most important part of all of this is to have people around you, mentors, a team of people that can support you in the book and in the creation of the whole project. I've been blessed to work with Chris and Janet and Marci and some others, and
that's a pretty good team.
It's a nice team, and I really love being on the team of some of our authors as well. It's really rewarding, being their marketing coach and consultant and implementer of these strategies. So just you can't do it all on your own. So find some people that can, and it's not just also mentors, but it's for example, in our Enlightened Bestseller program, after our boot camp weekend, the people in the participants go home and they're part of a mastermind group. So they'll be in a group of 4 or 6 authors who meet once a week on the phone and catch up. Okay, well, here are my wins for the last week. I did this, and this. This is my intention for the coming week, and where I really need support is, I'm trying to bang out chapter 3, and I'd love it if someone could help hold me accountable for doing that this week. Just something as simple as that. And some of these mastermind groups that we've helped set up have been going for 3 years now, and I know that Ellen Rogan's group continues to go, and without the support of that group, she probably wouldn't have had the same level of success. So find some people that can that you can be accountable for and to, and that can support you in this often lonely business of writing and marketing.
Yeah, and I think that's a great tip, is to mentors, team, mastermind group, however you do it, whatever combination of those you do. Because we always have we always have moments, don't we? Sometimes you're fired up and motivated and ready to go, sometimes not so much. And if you can spend some time, or just swap an email, or just get on a call with some like-minded people who are going to sort of G you up and get you through that little bump, remind you that you're not alone. We'll go through this stuff. It's a big help. Yeah,
absolutely. That's so key, especially as most of us are working virtually from home anyway. And So I hope those were helpful points.
They were fantastic, Geoff. Thank you. I'm taking lots of notes here. I mean, I've read the book, but it's always good, like you were saying at the beginning, it's always good to do revision and and just really reinforce those points. So I want to say, obviously we've chatted before, but it's great to have you on the summit. Thank you very, very much for being a guest, and thank you for giving us such really good and very actionable content. Really, really powerful stuff. Thank you, Geoff.
You're welcome. Thanks, John. Thanks everyone for watching.
Cheers, Geoff. Bye-bye.
Okay, bye-bye.